What's up, Mushroom Fam? It's Gary with Fresh from the Farm Fungi. I am bringing in this beautiful sunrise today, December 1st, 2021, to talk about a topic that's pretty near and dear to my heart. So, what did the cannabis industry get wrong, and what can the mushroom industry learn from their mistakes moving forward? So, this weekend, there is a psychedelic gathering of some sort in Denver. It's like a bazaar or an educational seminar, I guess you would call it, a symposium held by the Denver psychedelic community. I'm not going to be there. We're actually teaching classes in Denver with my friend Zach. So if you haven't looked into that, mushroomcult.net, if you're interested in taking our hands-on cultivation course. But besides that, the industry is moving forward in the direction that the cannabis industry did, about a decade ago. So for those of you who don't know, I did work a couple years in the cannabis industry during its inception and birth. I moved out to Colorado right when cannabis became legalized, and I worked in the industry as a cultivator and as a regulator. So I tested cannabis products. So I feel like I have a little bit more to speak on this topic moving forward. So as of right now, I just want to say that I'm grateful to live in Denver, where magic mushrooms were decriminalized. So they're the lowest priority for law enforcement to consume and produce for personal use. You might want to look up the exact legal terminology if you're interested, but it's still illegal to sell. So please don't expect me to let you know where you can find them, because there's not dispensaries in Denver. You have to cultivate them yourself. But we do teach how to cultivate mushrooms in general, and it's up to you to decide what you want to do with that information. Moving forward, I wanted to do another multiple choice question. I really like doing these, and it kind of sparks the conversation. So along the lines of this topic, what psilocybe species is most potent? You might be surprised. So is it A, Psilocybe cubensis, B, Psilocybe azurescens, C, Psilocybe cyanescens, or D, Paniolus cyanescens? All right, so back to the beginning. What did the cannabis industry get wrong? Like I said, my experience in the industry, I worked for one of the largest cultivators here in Denver as a tissue culture technician. So I tissue cultured over 80 different phenotypes to kind of begin their breeding program. So we produced aseptic clones in vitro and then hardened them off to create mother plants, which were used for mass production. So I did that for almost a year until our project was complete. I had an option to stay on and do cultivation work, but I thought that my laboratory skills would be more useful in the industry. So I joined a lab that did testing, and I did a little bit of consultation for safety in the industry. So I was a supervisor for my microbiology lab. We worked with the CDPHE, so the Colorado Department of Public Health and Safety and for the environment, to test for contaminants. So essentially, we were the gatekeepers to protect the consumers. So I felt really, near and dear to my heart to participate in that side of the industry. Being on the regulatory side, I did see some problems early on. Some of those issues have been resolved since then, but there was this lag phase from when it was legal to purchase cannabis until now, where some of the regulations were inconsistent or they didn't really make sense. So my number one criticism early on was the inconsistency of testing and levels of compliance for pesticides, for solvents in the concentrates, and the lack of testing for harmful substances like mycotoxins. So seeing some of these grows firsthand, there was a huge variation between cleanliness, organization, and the quality that was being produced at these different grow facilities. So the labs were in place to standardize all of these processes and all of the different grows. Over the years, some of the less skilled growers got weeded out from these regulations, which I believe that's a good thing for a consumer. So I always see things from the consumer perspective for safety reasons. One of the major flaws early on was the lack of testing for mycotoxins. So if you're interested in more about this, I did give a lecture for the Denver Mushroom Cooperative. I could post a link for that YouTube in our description below. But basically, I just talked about some of the potential hazards for mycotoxins in some of these products. So especially when you're dealing with aspergillus or even just, trichoderma, there's molds that produce these toxins that cannot be destroyed in the process of extracting cannabinoids for edibles and some of the other concentrates. And it's like a $12 test to screen for these mycotoxins, which can accumulate in your body. So your body has a difficult time to break down these toxins, and they can build up and cause sickness. So over the course of 2 years, I believe that they implemented mycotoxin screening now. But for that whole period of time, what was happening is that a large number of grows, when they would fail their test for too much contamination of yeast and mold, which we didn't really have to identify what molds those were, they would take that product and then grind it up and mass produce concentrates with the failed flour. So early on, flour was a higher standard product, but over the course of time, that's changed. I think they're doing a really good job now, but I just wanted to point out those flaws early on, so as the magic mushroom industry develops, they won't repeat those same problems. So definitely mycotoxin screening for mushrooms. Pesticides, you want to screen for that just because of the substrates and the accumulation effect that mushrooms have. But it's not so much about spraying your mushrooms, because usually people grow them in vitro in pretty sterile conditions. And then as far as solvents for concentrates, I don't know too much about the chemistry side of things, but there should definitely be potency testing, which is, extremely important for the consumer, which is another argument for legalization, but I'll get to that in a little bit, I guess. So my other criticisms of the cannabis industry, early on, licensing was just crazy. So in the very beginning, there was a lottery that you would enter for a certain fee to be able to obtain one of the licenses to be able to grow cannabis. So some companies ended up entering this lottery dozens of times, and it was pretty expensive. So that really important seed capital early on was not equally distributed, and I believe that some of the mom and pop shops who put up their life savings in order to get these licenses kind of lost out because they didn't have a second round of investment. And if there was equal access to the licenses, then maybe they would have succeeded. It's too hard to say. But that being said, after they changed from the lottery model, they just really jacked up the prices of the licensing fees for obtaining a license to grow cannabis. So that definitely pushed out the mom and pop boutique grows at that point. It was, exorbitant fees just to get licensed, and then they would come in and, check all the regulations of your building, which are very high standards. You had to have, complete security of the entire facility. You had to have a metric system in place for seed tracking from seed all the way until sale, which is very important. I'm not criticizing that, but I'm just saying that the fees to get in were so high that it created a wave of fundraising investment firms to hoard all of these licenses, and then they would resell them at even higher rates because at one point they limited the amount of licenses that you had to have. So I'm just saying this so that people can learn from these errors moving forward with the mushroom industry. So a lot of these companies went bankrupt quickly because they funded a lot of these people that didn't really know what they were doing. They couldn't learn on the fly fast enough because of the licensing fees. They lost out pretty fast. And some of them were scammed out of their investment capital. Some of these companies would raise millions and millions of dollars on claims that, all right, well, we're going to have this really unique product, and then they're just making edibles at non-efficient rates, and then they would go out of business, and all of these people that invested millions of dollars lost out. So I guess that's just a word to the wise. Don't get sucked into a get-rich-quick scheme. That's just common sense. Those are my main criticisms. The safety aspect, which I touched on. I am a big proponent of safety for the consumer. So the decriminalization model here in Denver is great, but I believe that we should be pushing for medical legalization or even recreational legalization, if that makes sense. Because when you have a decriminalized model, there's this gap between, all right, I produced these mushrooms and now I'm legally, allowed to consume them, but I don't know the percentage of psilocybin. I don't know if there's mycotoxins present. I don't know if I'm making a tincture, what harmful chemicals are in that. So it's up to you as a producer and consumer to do your due diligence, but I believe that it's up to the authorities to implement these regulations for the safety of someone who doesn't know how to grow mushrooms or doesn't have the time or doesn't want to, and they only want to experience it, one or two times maybe. They should be able to look at a bottle, see exactly what's in it, see the potency, see the safety, see a guide of, what you have to do to consume these mushrooms. There should be clinical retreats like they have ketamine centers. So all of these things I just wanted to bring up during this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. Please give us a thumbs up if you like this content. Subscribe if you're looking forward to more mycology videos or just discussions like this. I'm really excited for 2022 and for the future of the mushroom industry. I guess it's starting to take on this new life of, mental health clarity, just freedom. I guess just freedom in general. I don't know. Everyone should be able to decide if they want to use a substance as a tool, but there should also be clarity on top of that decision. So I'm grateful for, the community of Denver, and at the time of this video, Oakland and the state of Oregon and Ann Arbor, Michigan are also decriminalized. So congratulations, guys. But I think that stopping here is a mistake, and we should push for further legalization and protection of these very powerful and potent chemicals and organisms. So that brings me to the final thoughts is the question that I brought up earlier. So what psilocybin species is most potent? Is it A, Psilocybe cubensis, B, Psilocybe azurescens, C, Psilocybe cyanescens, or D, Paniolus cyanescens? So the correct answer, according to my research on Wikipedia, is D, Paniolus cyanescens, with alkaloid content of 2.5% and enhanced presence of baeocystin, which is a possible entourage chemical. So the commonly thought answer, I guess, second best answer is psilocybe azurescens, but according to Wikipedia, it averaged 1.8% psilocybin content. So that's another, topic of debate, but another reason why we should be testing just for research purposes. So I give a lot of credit to Oakland Hyphy out there for leading the way with chemistry analysis. But if there's any labs that are starting up in Denver, I would love to have a sit-down conversation with you guys and kind of discuss these issues that I just went over. And I'm looking forward to the next round of voting. I hope that we get to see some decriminalization statewide on the ballot, or possibly, medical legalization. That's definitely the next step forward. I think that really precise clinical settings and safety first is, very important, especially at the birth of this industry. All right, guys, give us a thumbs up, and until next time, much love.